I'm Grace, a teacher at Leiths, and today I'm going to be taking you through the making of a focaccia dough. So this is going to infuse the olive oil with the rosemary flavour, but it's also going to help soften down that rosemary and prevent it from burning when it goes on top of the focaccia. The first stage of making our focaccia is to make a pre-ferment. So a pre-ferment uses a really small amount of fresh yeast and it's going to kickstart the fermentation process. So I've got 200 grams of water, 200 grams of organic flour, just 1 gram of fresh yeast. I'm going to combine all of these together and then leave them overnight. So you can use a spoon to do this, or you can use your hands. And don't worry about the dough looking smooth. We just want to get all of that flour hydrated and all of that fresh yeast fully combined. Once it looks like this, we're going to cover it and leave it out overnight at room temperature. This is the biga that we've just made, and this is one that has been out at room temperature overnight. And as you can see, we've had some carbon dioxide, which has been produced from our commercial yeast and our wild yeast in the organic flour. It should look nice and bubbly. We can see that it's increased in size, and it should have an almost honeycomb appearance to it on the top. So once it looks like this, we're ready to make our focaccia dough. I've got 300 grams of organic bread flour, 3.8 grams of fresh yeast, water. We now need to combine all of these together, and that's going to start the process, which is called Autolysing. We're going to take our water and use that to release the biga from the bowl. And I'm just going to use a spoon just to make sure that all of that has been released from the bowl. I'm now just going to add the fresh yeast in with the flour, and then all of this needs to be combined. At this stage, we're not really looking for a really nice smooth dough. We just want to make sure that all of that flour has been hydrated by the water. So I'm happy that that has been fully combined, and now the Autolysing process can begin. Autolysing means when flour, a pre-ferment and water have been combined together, and it's before we add the salt. So what will be happening now is that the flavour will start to develop, and so will the gluten, and we need to strengthen that gluten before we can then strengthen it further by adding the salt. Here's the focaccia dough that I've just Autolysed, and here's one that I did an hour ago, and we can visibly see the difference in the two doughs. This one is looking quite rough around the edges, and this one has got some lovely bubbles started to form on the surface. It's also looking really nice and smooth. It's looking nice and wobbly. So at this point, we're going to now add in our salt, and that's going to further strengthen the gluten that has already been developed in the Autolysing process. I've got some water here, as that's going to prevent the dough from sticking to my hands. It will also increase the hydration of the dough. But if I just start to lift that up, we can see that there is some elasticity to the dough, and we've definitely got some gluten development. So we're now going to go in with our salt. And we're going to use a stretching and a pulling technique to incorporate that salt. And we're also going to be developing some more gluten here as well. So we want to mix this for about 4 minutes. That's just to help develop the gluten further and to make sure that all of that salt is fully combined. And at the end of this process, we'll add in our olive oil and mix for a further minute. So it's been about 4 minutes now. I'm now just going to go in with the oil and mix for a further minute just to combine that. The oil is going to help to lubricate those gluten strands, which is going to give us the really nice open texture that we're used to of a focaccia. I've added my oil and salt, and we can now begin the proving process. We're going to leave this for about 2 hours, and we're going to complete 1 set of folds at the hour point. The focaccia dough has been proving for an hour, and we're now ready to do our first and only set of stretch and folds. To do this, we're going to need to have some water nearby, as this just means that it will prevent the dough from sticking to our hands. And essentially what we're looking to do is to stretch the dough up and lift it over itself, thinking as well that we don't want to overstretch it and tear all those gluten strands that we've worked really hard to develop. This only needs to be done a couple of times. We don't want to keep overstretching, as this could also deflate the dough as well. So we're going to probably do it about 2 or 3 times and then leave it to prove for a further hour. So just wet your hands when you do this, as this will prevent the dough from sticking to them. And then the first thing that we need to do is to just really, really gently release the dough from the side of the bowl, as this is going to allow us to stretch it up and lift it over itself. So I've released the dough from all the way around the bowl, and we're now going to start with the first stretch and fold. So again, with wet hands, I'm going to scoop underneath with both hands, lift it up and pop it over the top. So lifting the dough up, stretching it over itself like so. I'm just going to turn the bowl around so that I can stretch and fold it at another point. Again, wet hands, lifting the dough up and stretching it over itself. This is going to give our bread the structure. It's going to give us those really nice irregular air pockets in the dough once it's baked. So again, up and over. And I'm just going to do it one more time on the 4th side. Up and over like so. That's all we're going to do. That is 1 set of stretch and folds. Don't be tempted to keep folding it, as like I said, you will just end up degassing it and losing all of that lovely volume, which is going to give our bread dough that really open texture. We're going to leave this to one side, covered at room temperature for 1 hour, and then we can pop it into our roasting tin. It's been 1 hour since our stretch and fold on the focaccia dough. We're now ready to move it from this bowl into the roasting tin, where it's going to carry on proving, and then we will finish off by baking it in the tin. I've prepped my roasting tin. I've just got some baking parchment here, which I've cut along the corners so that it fits inside nice and neatly. I've just sprayed that with some oil spray just to stop the parchment from moving around. And that should fit nicely in the bottom of the tin. I have some extra virgin olive oil here. I'm just going to put a very small amount in the bottom of the roasting tin, and then just use my hands to spread that over the base. We don't want to put too much olive oil in here at this point, as what can happen is we end up kind of frying the bottom of the bread. So just a small amount of oil on the base is all that we need. I'm going to get a little bit more oil on the other hand as well, and I'm going to release this dough from the bowl. So just making sure that we've released it even at the bottom of the bowl as well. And then I'm going to use a dough scraper now to gently tip that dough into the roasting tin. At this point, we can use oiled hands to gently press the dough into the corners of the tin. but it might not reach it. We're going to let this prove for 50 minutes, at which point we can gently push it into the corners of the roasting tin a bit more before leaving it for a further 40 minutes before baking. It's been 50 minutes and we're going to have a look at our focaccia dough. It's definitely becoming more bubbly, but I'm just going to now push it into the corners of the tin using an oiled fingers. I'm now going to leave it for a further 40 minutes until it gets even more bubbly and it reaches the top of the tin. 20 minutes before you want to bake your focaccia, we need to get our oven preheating. So this needs to go on at 230 degrees and we'll be turning it down to 220 once the focaccia goes in. It's been 40 minutes and we can see that the focaccia is looking really wobbly and bubbly. It's risen almost to the top of the tin. So we're now ready to pop in our rosemary and we can get that into the oven. I'm just making sure that the focaccia is all the way into the corners of the tin. I'm being really careful though not to degas it or to deflate it. And I'm just going to put that rosemary where my fingertips have made their mark. Using oiled fingers to pop that rosemary into the top of the focaccia. We're going to finish the focaccia with a little bit of sea salt. This can now go into our oven, which has been preheating at 230 degrees. Once the focaccia goes into the oven, we can turn it down to 220 degrees and we're going to bake this for about 15 to 20 minutes. The focaccia should look really nice and golden and there should be no grey on the base. So it's definitely looking really nice and golden, but I think we can go a little bit further with the colour. There's a little bit of greyness on the surface there as well. So I'm going to put this back into the oven for another 5 minutes and we'll check on it after that. It's definitely started to take on a bit more colour and I can see that those grey patches that were there previously aren't there anymore. We can allow this to cool slightly before lifting it up and checking the base. There should be no doughiness or grey areas on the bottom of the focaccia. It won't feel hollow like a normal bread because there is so much moisture in it. So these are the signs that we're looking for. Golden brown, no doughy or grey areas. The focaccia has been out of the oven for 5 minutes now. I'm just going to take it out of the tin, still on the parchment paper, and put it onto a wire rack to cool. I'm going to leave this to cool on the paper for a couple of minutes before removing it and putting it directly onto the wire rack. How do we know that our focaccia is cooked? It should be really nice golden brown colour and there should be those air bubbles on the surface. Our rosemary has taken on a little bit of colour but not too much because we soaked it in our olive oil. There should be no visible grey or doughy parts on top of the dough, and also when we lift up the dough and have a look underneath, it should be golden brown with no grey areas. On the inside of the dough, there should be a really nice irregular bubble structure that we've got from our stretching and folding. It should be nice and moist and there shouldn't be too much of a thick and dark outer crust. This will keep well for a couple of days or we can always freeze it and it will keep for 2 to 3 months.